meeting. Today we're going to just basically go over the study guide and talk a little bit about it, and then we'll be all good to go. Let me turn on the chat box here for the Zoom. Good morning, one and all. Okay, so thanks so much, guys. As usual, it's always nice to start off the day together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen as we did last Thursday, and then I'm just going to pull up the study guide, and we'll go over the first half of the material this time together. Okay, good morning, one and all. Not to worry, and thanks everybody for checking in and just saying hello. So I'm pulling up my study guide really fast. Okay, here I've got it. Hi, Mihaela and Eileen, Hamad, Lisa, Samantha, Chase, Daisy, John, Jacob. Appreciate it, everybody. Okay, so I've got my document pulled up. Just give me 2 seconds here. Okay, so you see the screen. Sorry, oops. My bad here. Okay, get this stuff organized. All right. Cool, so good. Here we go. I'm gonna move this thing a little bit. All right, I think that works. Yeah, everything's going well, guys. It's been a pretty busy, productive last week, since I had my little mishap on the road, but basically they're replacing the car, so everything's going well with the insurance. And today's our last meeting, so we're gonna basically, I think, have a good sprint to the finish here as we prepare ourselves for the test. The test is on Thursday, next class, just as we've done with our previous quizzes and exams. You're going to receive it from me in an emailed document through Canvas that I'll post right at the beginning of our class period, and you'll have until 12:35 to return back the answers. So we went over the second half of the study guide last time. Today, we're going to make sure to cover the first half. So I'm scrolling back to the top. Can you guys just let me know in the chat or however you like that you can see this and it's easy to view? You can see the screen, the shared screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So also, this is kind of like different. This is the only time you guys are going to ever see my house because this time I'm actually Zooming from and YouTubing from my home because other classes are all done, so I don't have to be on campus. And that's why it's a little bit of different surroundings today, my new home, really. I just bought this in July, so it's kind of nice to be here for a change instead of out at the office. Okay, so good. Let's go ahead and start at the top. And we're just going to take these questions one by one, try to get through them quickly. And then if you guys finish early, then you'll have a little extra time today for the rest of your afternoon. I'll be done grading the 4th homework assignment today, and I'll send off an announcement that you can check for your score on that anytime between now and the final on Thursday. If you want to know what all of your other 8 scores are going into the final and exactly what your grade is, just email me one time and I'll let you know what that information is. So those grades will be all done for the 4th homework, and everything else has already been graded before that. Okay, then, so let's get into the first question, everybody. What's a good critical thinker? What do you think is that? A good critical thinker, what could it be? Let me know when you think you've got the answer. Okay, thanks, Jeannie. It's a person who would not accept a claim unless it was supported by good evidence or good arguments. Also, there's a sort of second part to it as well. A good critical thinker is also the type of person who, when they make claims to other people, they always make sure to provide good evidence and good arguments to support their own claims. So information's a two-way street. When it's coming to you, you're not going to just accept it at face value unless there was reasonable evidence or arguments behind it. And when you make claims to other people, you try to provide those good arguments and evidence to support your own views. A bad critical thinker is the reverse. So that's the type of person who will believe information or claims that's not based on any kind of good argument or evidence. And also, a bad critical thinker lacks the ability to justify their own claims. So they'll make claims to people that they can't defend with argument or evidence. Hi, Kylie. Welcome back. Okay, next, what's an argument? in the formal sense that we've defined. Correct, Eileen. It's a set of two or more sentences where one of the sentences is the conclusion and all the other sentences are premises. So whenever you have an argument, you're trying to defend a claim based on reasons, and the conclusion is the claim you're trying to defend to show that it's true. The premises are the statements that are given as evidence to support or back up that conclusion. Okay, good. Now let's talk, well, I guess I already answered number 3, so anyway, I spoiled the fun. But what are the parts of an argument, everyone? You remember what I just said? There's, what are they called? Premises and a conclusion. So the conclusion is the statement that you're trying to prove to be true, and the premises are the evidence that supports, that backs up that conclusion. Okay, so since the whole point is to show or prove that something's true, tell me, what does it mean for a sentence to even be true? That's good, John. Thank you. So, truth. It is when what the sentence says matches the facts of reality. Can somebody type out something that's just a true fact? Something that's just an objective, true fact. Anything at all. Go ahead. Let me know when you got something. Say something true. Doctor is a man. You mean like me? Dr. Vulich is a man? Sure, that's true. Yes, that's a fact. Let's see. Dr. Vulich is wearing glasses. It's another fact, I guess. That's true about me. You are in class right now, Michaela. Sure. That's true, at least for now. It won't be true in a couple hours, I suppose, but for now it's true. What's something that was true yesterday that is true today and it will be true tomorrow? How about that? Well, you've said doctor's a man. I suppose that's clear enough. But, you know, there's other things, too, that don't have to refer to like our immediate circumstances. You could say the Earth is the third planet from the sun, or Biden is the president, or, you know, the clock has 24 hours. True. Although there is, well, it's fair enough. There's the 24-hour clock, and then some people have the 12-hour clock, but it's still 24 hours in a day. Humans do sneeze. Correct. I guess not all of them do, perhaps. Maybe if there's a baby, they haven't sneezed yet, but I suppose they will if you give them enough time. Okay, fair enough. Good. So thanks. Now, what is the definition of a belief? Suppose that a person believes a statement. What does that mean? Somebody will tell me, what is it for you to believe a statement? Well, you say faith without proof, Alex. You could have proof, though. You could believe something because of the proof. So it's not always that it's faith without proof. It's simply, yeah, when a person thinks that something's true. Now, it's correct, Alex, that you could believe in something for no good reason, and that would be like just pure faith. But there's also the ability to believe in something because you do have a lot of good reasons. Like, I don't know, you probably believe that I have a high school diploma, and you have reason to believe that because, after all, you know I'm your professor and I'm teaching you all this stuff. So you can sometimes believe in things like that you have no evidence for, like I just believe there's aliens out there because I just want to believe. Or you can believe in things that are clearly based on, you know, ample evidence. It just depends. But anyway, beliefs can be wrong. Sometimes a person can think something's true, but it actually isn't. Nonetheless, we do our best to try and believe things that we think are true. Okay, next question. What are some conclusion indicator words? If you could help me with that. Oh, thanks, John. So, hence, thus, therefore, those are all good examples. Consequently, let's see, due to the fact that, oh no, not due to the fact that, sorry, I'm already going to the next question, which is a premise indicator word. So let's stay focused on this. Therefore, thus, hence, so, consequently, it follows that. Okay, those are conclusion indicator words. They mean that the next thing that comes after is the conclusion of some argument. Okay, so let's follow up to the next. What are some premise indicator words? That is since, because, seeing as how, given that, in as much as, due to the fact that, on account of. All right, good. Those are evidence words, premise words. What those words indicate is that you're listening to evidence that is part of somebody's argument toward a conclusion. Okay, what's an imperative sentence? What is an imperative? They are commands, that's right. Can anybody provide an example of an imperative? Kitties. The cats are over here, so maybe you guys will get to see them actually. Take out the trash, sit down, yeah. Leave me alone, go away. do your homework, go to work. That's great. Thank you, guys. All correct examples. So we're just moving to the next thing. What's an interrogative sentence? What kind of sentence is that, and what are some examples? Okay, good. They're questions. Questions like you could ask a person, or you could just ask in general. Any favorite questions? In philosophy, we always like a good question. Who are you? Yeah, that's one of the deep ones. I'd like to know, what time is it? There you go, correct. Who are you? What time is it? Where's the bathroom? Where can I place my bag, etc. Okay. Next up, what's an assertion, or we call it an assertoric sentence? Sentences that are either true or false. Yes, those are the mainstay in logic that we talk about, because those are the ones that have that could be used as premises or conclusions in arguments. So anything that's either true or false. The pyramids are in Egypt. The Eiffel Tower is in France. If I say the Eiffel Tower is in Egypt, that's also an assertion, but it happens to be false. So when we say things or write things down that match the facts, we're making true assertions. If we say things that are false, either deliberately or unintentionally, those are false assertions. Okay, now what is the definition of a deductively valid argument? There you go, John, right on top of it. So if all the premises of it are true, then the conclusion must be true. Okay, if the premises are, then the conclusion has to be. So like as an example, let's suppose that someone was born in the 2000s, like the first decade of this new century, the aughts, as some call it. Maybe some of you guys, I don't know of your age, but some of you were probably born in that decade. So suppose you're born in the aughts and it's 2021. Based on those two facts, I'm going to say, therefore, you're not 25 yet. Does that make sense? Like you're less than 25 if you're born in the aughts. That has to be the case, because if these two premises are true, then there's no possibility that the conclusion is false. Like being born during that decade implies logically that you're lower than even 22. Okay. So just a deductively valid argument. There's all kinds. All men are mortal. LeBron James is a man, therefore LeBron James is mortal. Even though he seems superhuman at times, of course, to all his fans of the Lakers, he's just a human mortal, as all are. Anyway, okay, so what's a sound argument? Let me know what's a sound argument. Okay, it is a deductively valid argument, but where all the premises are true. That's right, Jacob. And to sort of expand on that, let me ask someone for an argument that's valid, but it isn't sound. It's valid, so like the logic makes sense, but it just contains false information. So let me see if anyone can formulate one such example. And if you need a little help while you're thinking, I'll just offer you some thoughts. If you say a false all statement, then that can easily be one premise in a valid but unsound argument, or a false no statement. So let me know if you have something on your mind, and then we can work with whatever you type out or say. Let's hear it. Valid but not sound. So the conclusion is based on these premises. It follows from them. It's just that the premises are not really facts. So let me hear something. This is definitely one of the type of questions that's likely to appear, so it's good to make sure we have a clear example. Okay, Jacob, all dogs are black. That's a good way to start. You see you're following my suggestion, because you know that that's going to be a false claim, and the logic therefore will make sense, but it will still be based on a false premise. Okay, so all dogs are black. A golden retriever is a dog, and therefore a golden retriever is black. Correct. This is a valid argument. Just looking at the logic of it and the information, the conclusion follows from the information in the premises. But the premises are not both true. Particularly premise one, which says all dogs are black. No, they're not. But if they were, then the remaining claims would have followed from, or I should say the conclusion would have followed from those statements. All men have walked on Mars. Elon is a man, and therefore Elon has walked on Mars. That's a good example too. Yeah, it's valid, because just thinking about the information, like say you had no knowledge about whether these things are true or false, you could still say that that conclusion is logically based on the premises, but the first premise is false. I think the second premise is true, but he does sometimes come across as like an alien or a cyborg. Okay, Daisy, all girls have long hair. You're a girl, and therefore you have long hair. Now, that's a valid argument, but it's not sound. Why is it not sound? Because the first premise has a false claim about all girls having long hair. Okay, good, guys. I think you've shown that you can understand that, which is clear. So thank you. So let's go ahead. What is a sound argument then? Like, now you just give me another example, but the only difference is the premises have to actually be facts in this case. So let's see if you can generate something for me on that. A fact-based argument where it's valid, instead of these, which are valid, but they're not based on facts, or at least not all facts. So what do you think? A true all statement, maybe? A true no statement, another possible option. Or it could be something about like relationships of containment, like if one thing is inside another and the other is inside another, and the first is inside the third kind of stuff. Or it could be like less than and greater than relations, like if A is less than B and B is less than C, then A is less than C, but these would have to be related to facts that are correct. So just giving you some thoughts, but let's see if you can supply me with one good example, and then we'll move on. So sound, I mean, just have to have some true claims that lead to a valid conclusion. The United States is in North America, and California is in the United States, and therefore California is in North America. That's perfect. Yes, that's a valid argument, and it's sound because the United States is in North America, and California is part of it. So California must be part of the larger structure that the U.S. is a part of. Are all parts of the United States in North America? I think so. Alaska and Hawaii, don't those qualify as well? But anyway, not to be too picky, I'm taking it as a given that those are facts. Yes. So that's clear enough. You could also say like everyone who is born has two parents. I was born and therefore I have two parents. Or any number of other examples. All mammals have warm blood. The giraffe is a mammal, so the giraffe has warm blood, and furthermore. Okay, so let's keep going, guys. So next I'm asking you this. What is an inductively strong argument? What's the definition of an inductively strong argument? So now we're off of induction, and now we're switching over to, off of deduction and into induction. So let me hear it if anyone can tell me what's an inductively strong argument. An argument where if all the premises are true, then the conclusion is highly likely to be true. Yes. So good. With an inductive argument, the conclusion cannot be guaranteed, but it's something that's probable based off the premises. It would be like someone saying that, I may have used this example before, but suppose that someone had been driving for like 20 years, and they say, I've never had a major car accident in 20 years of driving, so I will not have a major car accident today. Would that be inductively strong? Yes, because it's based on a 20-year track record. But the conclusion cannot be guaranteed because, after all, anything can happen, as I've sadly learned in my own life. So induction gives us basic reasons to assume a conclusion is true, but it can't be guaranteed. Now, you say, John, the world has not seen an alien for the past 20 years. And so it's highly likely that we won't see one tomorrow. Good. So something that hasn't happened over such a time, maybe one infers inductively that it won't happen in the next case. Or something that has been happening reliably over time, one can infer that it will continue to happen. So like the sun has come up and therefore it will continue to come up, and things of that kind. Okay. Now what would be inductively weak? That would be like an argument where the premises don't even show the conclusion has much likelihood. So those would have to be like random things that are not usually likely to repeat with any frequency. You could say, I won the lottery yesterday, and therefore I will win the lottery again tomorrow. It's just something that's highly unlikely to happen with any type of repetition. So just based off one example, we don't have good reason to conclude that it will repeat. Or I found $20 on the ground yesterday, so I'll find $20 on the ground today. The last time the last person who I met was named John, so the next person that I met will be named John. There's just random things that are coincidental that are not likely to repeat, and those would be inductively weak arguments. Okay, now there are different forms of valid deductive argument, and we studied and learned about, I think, 4 of them. So first off, I want to ask you about the disjunctive syllogism. What is disjunctive syllogism? How's that argument look in general? Whenever you're ready with the explanation or the format, let me hear it or see it. Disjunctive syllogism. Either A or B, not A, and therefore it'll be B. So the way you wrote it, Lisa, you're trying to cover both cases. Like suppose that we eliminated A in the second premise, then the conclusion would be B, the alternative. On the other hand, suppose we eliminated B in the second premise, then the conclusion would be A, the other alternative. So just so everyone's clear, the right form is written there. It's either A or B. That's what we call a disjunction. It's an either or sentence. That's how it starts. Then afterwards, the second premise will negate one of these two disjuncts. So it will either negate the left or the right side, either A or B. Depending on which one is eliminated, then the conclusion is the alternative. So can somebody fill in these A's, B's, and C's or whatever, and A's and B's really, and give me an example that follows that form so we can all look at it together? But you've got the right format, yes. Let's now give one example of that kind. So either blank or blank, and you just have to fill in the blanks and then follow it, the format from there. So what's something that might be a set of 2 possible options or outcomes? Let's know, anybody that's got something. Either my friend will play basketball or surf, the beach is closed, and therefore what will he do? Therefore he will play basketball, correct. So it's perfectly clear. Suppose there's only 2 activities that are on this person's mind, and if one of them gets eliminated, it's going to be the other one. There you go. I will either go to Mexico or Switzerland. Switzerland is too expensive, therefore I will go to Mexico. Sounds good, Jacob. Another fair example. And you guys get it perfectly well. So there's 2 choices, 2 possibilities. One gets ruled out, and so it's the other one then that remains true. Okay, good. Now, there's modus ponens. There's 3 of these different what we call hypothetical syllogisms. Modus ponens is the first. So let's hear about it. What's modus ponens? What's the form of this? Eddie. If A, then B, A, and so therefore B. That's right. It's pretty straightforward if you really think about it. So it begins with an if-then. That's the first premise, as you wrote. And then the second premise of the argument just affirms what we call the antecedent, which is the if claim. So if I run a marathon, then I will be sore. I ran a marathon, and therefore I was sore. You know, it's just like one thing would cause or would imply a second thing. And so in case the first thing happens or becomes true, then the second thing that follows from it will also be true as a result. So if I cut my hand, then I will bleed, and I cut my hand, so I'm bleeding. There's just a lot of different possibilities, everybody. So hopefully those are not too hard. Sometimes people will make the mistake of affirming the wrong part in the second line, but just keep in mind, it's modus ponens is you affirm the left side, then you get to the right. If I run, I'll sweat, I ran, and therefore I sweated. Sure, that's another fair example. If I drink too much, then I will be hungover, and I did drink too much, and so therefore I was hungover. There's just a lot of cases. Okay, well, let's talk next about the modus tollens, which is kind of like the sibling of modus ponens, just slightly different. So how does this one go? They have a family resemblance at parts, but they have a slight difference of appearance as well, and you'll be able to tell me what the proper format is here. I see you giving me another one there. Well, okay, good. I like how you're giving me the example, John. That's great. But before this, let us get the format, and then we'll refer to your example afterwards. No, it's fine. That's good. But I want us to all be clear how the structure looks, first of all. Okay, good. So if A, then B, not B, so therefore not A. That's right. And looking at your own example here, it's clear. It says, if I drank the poison, I will die. Suppose this is like, I don't know, cyanide or whatever, arsenic. So if you drank it, you'll die, but you didn't die, and therefore you must not have drank the poison. because drinking it would have caused death. And from the fact that you have not died, we can conclude that you must not have drank this thing. That's good. Anyone else with another second possible example of the modus tollens while we're on the topic? One thing would lead to another, but the other thing didn't happen. So the lead-in didn't happen either. Let's see if we get one more example, because that's always, sometimes that one throws people off a bit, and I just like to make sure it's clear. So A leads to B, but without B, we know A didn't happen. So what do you have? You gave a good example, John, but anyone else or whoever wants, follow it up with a second possible case. Okay, Jacob, if I stay up, then I'll be tired, but you're not tired. And so you just didn't stay up late. That's a good example again, yeah. So if staying up late causes you fatigue, and you have not got that fatigue, then of course the thing causing it didn't occur, namely staying up. Okay, correct and good. I guess then let's go ahead and talk about the chain argument, and then we'll be done with all the argument forms. So chain argument, one more. What's the structure of this guy? If A, then B, right? If B, then C, yes. So therefore, if A, then C. Right, now chain argument, when it has two premises, that's how it would run, A to B, B to C, and therefore A to C. There could be more than two premises. If there were, then the only rule is that the conclusion is going to join the first antecedent, A, with the final consequent, whatever that will be. In this case, it's C, but if there was another line like C to D, then the conclusion would be, therefore, if A, then D. All right, so can we fill in a little bit of this blank space of A and B and C? Let me know. Just get an example, I mean, right? So if A would happen, then B would happen. And if B would happen, then C would happen. So overall, if A occurs, it's going to lead to C. But what are some things that follow in that pattern? You've got to think of chain reactions of events. Okay, Daisy, if you study, you'll get good grades. You know, that's, no, Daisy, sorry, that's not correct. What you wrote was modus ponens, and it's not the chain argument. It's okay, because with chain argument, you have to have a second premise that's also a conditional, another hypothetical. Eric, if I do well in the final, then I will get a high grade. If I get a high grade, my mom will not blame me. Okay, but we're still waiting on the final conclusion here. So therefore, if I do well in the final exam, my mom will not blame me. Correct. Okay, good. So in your example, Eric, it goes from you doing well in the final, that causes your high grade. And then if you have the high grade, it causes your mom to not blame you. And so therefore, the conclusion is if you get this well grade in the final, your mom won't blame you. Alex, if I study, I'll pass my test. If I pass my test, I'll graduate. And therefore, if I study, I'll graduate. Okay, good. Sure. If I water the plant will grow. And if the plant grows, then it will grow fruit. So if I water the plant, then it will grow fruit. I don't know. Just there's a multitude of examples, but you, I hope, see the picture and the pattern now. Okay, good. So let's talk then one more thing about chapter 8 and stuff. And that's the standard form of an argument. So visually, how is the argument supposed to be displayed on the screen or on the page or on the board? Where does the conclusion go? Where do the premises go? Visually, like how are they arranged? Just let me know that. That's what standard form is about. And you guys are doing it yourself. So good, Eileen. Conclusion is at the bottom, below a horizontal line, and the premises are listed above it. Yes. It's important to remember that you separate the conclusion from the premises and that each premise occurs on its own separate line in a list. Okay, good. So when you're writing arguments, if you do, like on the final, try to write them in the standard form, as we've learned. Okay, now there's a set of questions about chapter 1, taking us back to our earlier days in the class. So one question is about the Milgram study. And if you even just have a few words or notes about it, what is the Milgram? Which experiment was this? And what were the final results or whatever? Milgram study, who knows? Yes, Alex, that's right. So In the experiment, there were people who were being told to deliver shocks. So there was two roles. There was the teachers and the learners. The learners were placed behind a wall, and they were told to memorize pairs of words. The teacher was told to recite the first word in the pair and then give them a set of options to see if they could remember which option was the one that was paired with that word originally based on memory. So whenever they would give a wrong answer, the teacher was told by the researcher to give a shock to the learner and that they should increase the voltage of each shock every time they gave a wrong answer. In fact, there were no real shocks being given, but the teacher didn't know that. And so what they were actually studying was, how would you put it? What were they really studying? They were trying to find out how far someone would go, right, Alex? How obedient will everyday people be when they think they're being given orders, even though the orders are harmful? And the majority gave all the shocks. At least 2/3 of the subjects gave the full voltage shocks. So it kind of shows that people have a tendency to be a little less critical and more obedient than they ought to be. But the good critical thinkers were those that were able to give reasonable basis to disagree and to refuse. So another important study from Stanley Milgram. Then there's the Philip Zimbardo experiment. Do you know what this one was? Just even briefly, like what happened or what was the case? The Zimbardo experiment was which one? The prison experiment. Yes, Lisa. So in this case, Philip Zimbardo in 1971, or maybe I got the year wrong, but I thought it was 71. It could have been 73. Anyway, early 70s. Yeah, there was a team that was created separating guards and prisoners into the two roles. And they were supposed to be running this simulated prison environment for 2 weeks, but it had to stop and be canceled after just 6 days because of how brutal and cruel the guards started to treat these prisoners, even though it was a total simulation. And it just kind of reminds us again that people in positions of authority will sometimes behave badly when they're given loose supervision and social support for the things they're doing. So once again, good critical thinking helps to make sure that we think twice about how we're acting and whether it's proper and right. Now, there's 3 stages of cognitive development. William Perry Jr. discussed these stages of cognitive development, which are it's the process of acquiring intelligence and problem-solving ability over your life. What were the 3 stages, if you could tell me the names of them? Not to be confused with the 3 stages of critical thinking, but of cognitive development. Dualism, yes, followed by the second one, relativism, and then finally we have commitment, yes. Dualism, relativism, and commitment. Just a few things about each one. First of all, dualism is when you think that truth is all just black and white, there's no ambiguity, and authority figures know everything. So all you do is listen to them and you don't think for yourself. That's dualism. You get a little further in life and you start to become more relativist in your thinking. Now, in relativism, you believe that truth is all personal opinion. And so since these are all just opinions anyway, we should treat them all equally and not judge them. But when you go to the highest level commitment, now you actually think you can commit to your own views based on reason and the best available evidence, but these are not views that are necessarily shaped by relative truth. You think that you're getting the actual truth, and you also don't just defer to a community of experts, but you think you can figure things out on your own. Okay, now, confirmation bias. Anyone remember what that one is? Thank you, Jeannie. It's only seeking out information that supports what you already believe to be true. So if there was, like, say, a vaccine skeptic type person, then when they go out into the internet or wherever they go, they're only going to look for friendly information that supports their conspiratorial anti-vaccine worldview, and they're not going to challenge themselves by looking at, the credible scientific evidence that disputes this. So when you have confirmation bias, you're really not willing to learn about information that contradicts your own views, and you exclusively, and in a kind of biased way, seek out supportive information entirely. Okay, now, qualities of a good critical thinker. There's a whole mix of them here, and so I kind of, as you guys know, kind of condensed that down into one big question. But of course, if a test situation was made, I would, pick and choose different items from this list. But I'll quickly just go through them lightning round. Analytical skills. That's when you have the ability to provide logical support for your beliefs instead of having unfounded opinions. Effective communication, that's the ability to speak and write well as having the ability to listen carefully to others and having awareness of different communication styles. Inquiry skills, that's the ability to gather, assemble, and present information for the purposes of research. Flexibility is the ability to change your mind or plans and being open-minded to alternative ideas. Open-minded skepticism, that is, what do we call it? Only believing things that can be proven beyond reasonable doubt, but still keeping an open mind to all views until such proof arrives, if it ever does. Then there's the method of doubt. And the method of doubt says to assume what? Anyone now? Let me ask you that quickly. Method of doubt, assume what things? Let's see if you find that in your notes or the book, or if it's just in your memory. With Descartes, René Descartes, French philosopher of the 1600s, he said, if we want to find out what's certain, we have to use this method of doubt, and the method of doubt will tell us to assume what? Assume to be false anything that can possibly be doubted. That's right, John. I see the little typos, but I get the picture. Assume to be false anything that can possibly be doubted. So if there's even a small chance that something could be incorrect, then the method of doubt says, let's suppose that it is false and keep going on like that until we reach something that's not capable of being doubted. Now, collaborative learning. Collaborative learning, that's the ability to work well with other people, to come up with shared solutions to common problems instead of doing things all by yourself and not taking anyone else's input. And then finally, there's the creative problem solving. That's the ability to come up with imaginative solutions to complex problems, both by developing contingency plans in advance for what might go wrong, and also, in case you don't have those, being able to quickly assess the situation and come up with the best strategy for a solution quickly. Okay, now in a democracy, which is our form of government, why would it be such an important deal to be a good critical thinker? Because those skills really come in handy when it comes time for us to be what or do what? Let me know. The connection between critical thinking and democracy and our citizenship as citizens in this democracy. It's basically all about what factor? Let me ask. Just quickly, let me know. Well, developing a rational life plan is something that's related to this, but it's a separate matter from what makes it such a good thing as a citizen in a democracy. What's democracy all about? Having a king just dictate to you what you have to do, following rules where you have no input. What is the, it's to form your own opinions and vote. That's right. So in a democracy, we get to vote and we get to make choices about who's going to lead this country, who our elected leaders are going to be, what propositions and policies we're going to enact through direct voter referendum. And so anyway, when we make these votes, we have to choose between the two options. We have to therefore be able to understand the arguments they're making. We have to be able to understand the policy solutions that they're suggesting. And if we can't make informed decisions by voting, then our votes won't be rational. So democracy depends on well-informed citizens that can cast wise votes. And since critical thinkers are good at weighing arguments and evidence, then they're going to be good at making careful and well-chosen votes. Okay, now explain how critical thinking can benefit you in terms of making a rational life plan and self-esteem. So good critical thinking, along with all the other skills that it gives us, helps us to be good planners. Critical thinkers are good at determining what it is that they want in life and what the best steps are going to be to get to those goals. So they set goals. They also know all of the intermediate steps that have to be met in order to get to those bigger goals. And they know how to weigh their talents and abilities in the judgment of which goals to pursue and how to get there. Also, it helps with your self-esteem, because if you're a good critical thinker, then you know that you can solve problems and that you can escape the difficulties that life challenges us with at times. So you'd like to be the sort of person who's self-assured and rational, capable of solving problems, instead of the sort of person who has to turn to those folks whenever something goes off course. Now, three-stage model of critical thinking. We've got experience, interpretation, and analysis. So let me just hear about what's the definition of each of the stages, starting with experience. The first level or stage of critical thinking experience is when we do what? What do you think? With the experience stage, the first one? Anybody can let me know here. Correct. There you go, John. So somebody just tells you what the experience was or what the event was, but they're not yet trying to explain why or how it happened. Good. So the experience stage is like just the what of the process. Here's what happened. But when we get to the interpretation stage, we're taking a step further and now we're trying to figure out what. What's the point of the interpretation stage 2? So we had an experience, and now, correct, Jacob. Now we're going to try and explain why or how it did happen. So we've gone from just pointing out something has happened to now getting to the point of trying to explain the reasons. Thank you. And so then finally, with the final one, which is analysis, we allow ourselves to go back to the old interpretation and just ask ourselves a second time: is this really the correct explanation, though, or is there a different one that's maybe better or more reasonable? Okay, so we start off with just experiences. We try to find out why they happen, and then we leave ourselves the room to second guess or at least reconsider the prior interpretation. All right. Now, the next one talks about obstacles and barriers to critical thinking, of which there are a number. So, again, I'll just try to go through these quickly. And avoidance is simply when you avoid people or information that disagree with your views. You should try to engage with people and information, almost especially when it's unfriendly to your existing views, so that you can test those views against others. And then there's anger. That's becoming angry or mad when somebody presents you with an alternative view, instead of just considering what they are saying. There's no need to get mad at people for disagreeing with you, or if you do get mad at that, expect to be mad all the time, because there's no one in this world who's going to have a unanimous set of opinions behind what they think. So better to just calmly and reasonably deal with the disagreements and see if you can have a meeting of the minds. Okay, cliche. These are overused common sayings, one-liner phrases. Often they're used to try and short circuit or stop critical discussion in its tracks. So things like agree to disagree, to each his own, whatever, it is what it is. That's how the cookie crumbles. Um, and things like that. You've heard cliches. Denial, to simply deny alternative views without even investigating their credibility. Some people, you can't even get them to look at evidence, even if it's clear, because they're just in the grip of denial. So instead of practicing denial, let's try and open our minds enough to at least look at different viewpoints. Sometimes we'll have our minds changed, and that's okay. Ignorance. This is when a person deliberately stays uninformed about a given topic so that they don't have to make any choices about what to do or about what view to take. Conformity. It's when you take the view of who or what. Let me ask you about that one quickly. Just take a second here. Conformity is the concept of accepting which views and why. The popular view, right? The view that's held by the majority. And why would someone do that? It's because they want to fit in and they don't want to stand out. So, exactly, you adopt a majority view to fit in and not stand out. Sometimes the majority's right, other times they're not. And you really owe it to yourself to have a better reason for your side with the majority than just saying because it's popular. Um, Finally, we have struggling. This is a person who endlessly debates what position or action to take, and they never actually reach the conclusion. So they just flip-flop back and forth and never come to a final stance. Okay, now different types of narrow-mindedness. These are further categories of barriers to critical thinking. Absolutism is the type of person who cannot challenge authority and just always assumes they're absolutely correct. Egocentrism is when you think that you are the best and smartest, so you're the center of everything, and therefore you don't have a lot of respect for people that don't agree with you. So it's like egotistical. Ethnocentrism is the unjustified belief in the superiority of a person's race, group, or culture. So if somebody thought that, like, they're a part of a racial, religious, or cultural group that is somehow superior to others, that would be ethnocentrism, which is of course unjustified and wrong. And then anthropocentrism is the view that mankind is the only thing that matters, so that non-human animals and nature have a lower status or just don't have as much value. Um, And then these concepts of rationalization and doublethink. Let me see, what does somebody know about doublethink? What's that one? Doublethink. Mentioned in the classic fictional novel of George Orwell, 1984, but mentioned also in our class. So anybody here, let's hear it. What is the doublethink? That's right. When the person believes two opposite things at the same time. So sometimes we can be caught up in a kind of, some call it cognitive dissonance, where your mind is contradictory because it believes two things that can't both be true. So like double standards. Maybe a person says, I believe everyone should have the right to marry whoever they want, but I don't want to live next door to gay people. You know, that's kind of inconsistent. If everyone's equal and we should treat everyone equally, then why do you have a problem living next to such a person? Or maybe somebody would say, um, you know, marriage is sacred, but at the same time, I don't think it's so bad if I cheat on my partner. Um, they kind of have two opposite beliefs at the same time. If it's sacred and important to have faithfulness in the marriage, then how does that make sense together with the person's other belief that they're doing nothing wrong if they cheat? You know, so when you have double standards in mind, you have to clarify and correct one of them because you need to be consistent. And then rationalization. That's when a person does something without critically thinking. They just kind of do it randomly, spontaneously, maybe but based on an impulse or an urge. But then later on, they're called to give an account of why, and so they come up with a more intelligent sounding reason after the fact. So somebody buys a really expensive meal and they don't even have a lot of money right now, and somebody asks, I thought you were trying to save money, you know, for this important trip that you're going to take or something. Why did you blow it on this expensive dinner? Now maybe they'll say something like, oh yeah, well, you know, I mean, every so often a person needs to really treat themselves, because if you don't, it'll really hurt your mental health. So I needed to have like one of those kind of mental health days, and this food was important to me. It really reset my psychology. But the thing is, maybe they're just coming up with this after the fact to sort of make it sound like they had a whole psychologically based reason for doing something when in fact it was done impulsively. So I don't know. Anyway, rationalization. Now, that takes care of chapter 1, and we've moved on now to chapter 3. So chapter 3 was all about language, and there's obviously certain questions about it. So what is language? I'll get you started, but you can help me finish. It's a system of something, and it involves different kinds of symbols, but you'll tell me it's a system of what, and what could the symbols be? Let's hear it or see it. Language, the meaning of the concept of language. I mean, we're using it right now, but we just got to say what it is. Let's mention what it is instead of using it for just a moment. So it is a system of communication, and it can be, it involves a set of symbols. Okay, so let's make sure to say that that's the part of the definition. It's a system of communication which involves a set of symbols which can be of 3 possible kinds: spoken, like you're hearing me speak, or written, like you're seeing these typed out words, or nonverbal, which can be sign language, body language, hand gesture, or tone of voice. So we have to communicate to each other as human beings. Being humans, we have access to all these facts, ideas, knowledge, and the only way that we can communicate them to each other are by means of signs that we show each other. So these signs could be auditory, like you hear my voice, be visual, like you see the symbols there. Um, you know, I suppose there could also be nonverbal signs like Braille. I haven't really, but those are written in a sense, but they're tactile signs. You don't see them with the eye, but you feel them with the hand. So I guess they have a kind of intermediate status. I should have mentioned that before when we were talking about nonverbal communication. But anyway, there you go. Communication, set of symbols that's conveys a system of communication. Now, there are different views. Sorry, no, that's the next set of topics in chapter 4. Here we go. Different functions of language. So different things language can be used to do. Primarily, we use language to inform. That's the informative function. So that's to simply report information that's either true or false. Um, Directive language is when we use language instead to direct or influence behavior. That's like the use of imperatives to command people's behavior. Expressive language is language that's used to convey feelings or emotions. and to bring about an emotional response. We can see that in like poetry, song lyrics, certain forms of literature. Um, and then there's ceremonial language, which is language that's used in specific formal settings or official ceremonies like weddings, court proceedings, meetings of Congress, and stuff like that. Now, there are different types of meanings and different types of definitions. Um, so, denotative meaning is the word that refers to just basically the official dictionary definition of a word. So, the denotative meaning is like its core textbook definition, not influenced by um, positive or negative associations or slang. Connotative meaning, though, is meaning that's based on past experience and associations, and it could have a positive or negative spin. We talked about the word dog and how it can refer denotatively to a certain type of mammal species, but in connotative terms, it could be used as a term of insult or a term of praise. Um, the word gay, I guess, denotatively originally referred to like a state of being happy or satisfied, as in the old Fred Flintstone theme song, we'll have a gay old time. But of course, over the years, I think its denotative meaning has kind of changed. But in a connotative sense, I've heard some use it, unfortunately, as like a slur to express dissatisfaction, something they don't like. But you've also heard it used with a positive connotation too. So just other examples. Now, stipulative definition. Those are definitions that are given to what kind of words? Let me ask you this one quickly. A stipulative definition, we assign these definitions to which words in our language? To new terms, right? New words that are popping up and appearing in the language. So there's all kinds of words that just didn't exist to your great grandparents living 100 or 150 years ago. Anything having to do with modern digital technology, computing, or other cultural trends would fall within the scope of the stipulated definitions. A theoretical definition is a definition of a scientific term. So stuff you'd find in a science course or textbook like mass, acceleration, force, whatever else. An operational definition, that's the use of a boundary or a threshold to create standardization in the use of terms. I don't know if anyone has the examples in mind of what could be something defined operationally, but there's going to have to be like some kind of limit line above or below which the term does or doesn't apply, and we sort of stipulate this threshold. So who knows what's an operationally defined concept? The way that we define such things as what? Let's just see the examples real quick of operationally defined terms. Okay, poverty defined by the poverty line. Yes, there's an annual amount of income, which we say is the lower boundary for people to be above poverty. So if you have more income than that per year, then you're definitionally defined as being not in poverty. Obesity would be another one, which relies on the use of the body mass index metric. Okay, good. Adulthood being 17 years old. Or we could say the territorial borders of a state. Why is it that this is the line? Well, because we just operationally define where the state one ends and where the other one begins. Okay, good. Now, a persuasive definition is an attempt to make a definition that persuades someone to agree with your point of view. So they're like loaded definitions. They're often biased. And again, like I say, it's when you define something in order to try and persuade someone to agree with your view. So if you defined, sorry, private property as theft, or if you say capitalism is theft, that means you don't like it. On the other hand, if you say like, socialism is fascism or something, then you're making the opposite claim for a different rhetorical effect, to try and make the definition itself imply that the thing is bad or good. So like if somebody says, what is a big thick steak? It's a little piece of heaven. That's a definition that's trying to make you like agree that it's a good thing to eat or to value that type of cuisine. So anyway, whether positive or negative, persuasive definitions try to shape our views in line with the one who gave the definition. So sometimes you got to be a little bit skeptical about them, since they, after all, aren't allowing you to come to your own conclusions. And then when we look at definitions, there's qualities that can make them better or worse. And we talked about 5 qualities that good definitions basically have. Who can tell me what some of those are? So if it's a good definition, it should be neither too blank or blank. That's at least one of the points. Let's see who knows a couple or whatever. Neither too broad nor too narrow. Good. Thank you, Lisa. So a good definition should not refer to more stuff than the word does, nor less. So if I tell you a dog is an animal, that's just not narrow enough. It doesn't narrow it down enough, like which kind of animal. But if I say it's a cocker spaniel, that's too narrow, because now that doesn't refer to all the dogs, but just a subcategory of them. Another feature is that it should not be circular. That's right, Jacob. So a good definition should not feature the word in its own definition. If I tell you that a square is anything that is a square, that's not helpful because it just repeats the word without really explaining it in other words. Eileen, it states all the essential attributes of what is defined and it doesn't leave anything out. Yes. So a definition would be incomplete if it failed to mention certain qualities of the thing being defined. If I say to you that a square has 4 sides, that's partially the definition, but it doesn't get to all the essential attributes because that doesn't distinguish between a square and a rectangle. Okay. So we say not circular, neither too broad nor too narrow, states all the essential attributes. And just 2 more, like it shouldn't use what sort of language? Avoid, let me know. Avoids emotional language, right? And also it should avoid overly obscure and technical language that can't be understood by your audience. Like if you're asking the doctor, what's wrong with me, doc? And he says, okay, are you ready for this? Well, right now you have a aortic mass that is contributing to a diastolic slowdown in the left ventricle. You might not know exactly what they mean. You might have to say, I'm sorry, doctor, but you're going to have to bring it down to my level a bit so I can comprehend this. So when it's too complex and difficult to understand, that's overly technical language. Emotional language should also be avoided. So you shouldn't be telling people that this is awesome or terrible or cool or bad, as long as you're just defining something in a neutral way. Okay, now there's different rhetorical devices that we talked about, everyone. Let me just hear the name of some of those different rhetorical devices. There's 5 at least that we talked about. So we have something-ism. What is it? Let me know. Euphemism. Okay, good. Now, what is a euphemism for anybody here? Just asking what the definition of the word is. Euphemism. You'll find it. I think you know it. Just let me know when you're ready. Okay, so yeah, you replace a negative or neutral word with a more positive sounding one in order to sugarcoat the truth. That's right. So it would be like, instead of saying that someone's dead, they passed away or they're in a better place. Or instead of saying the car's old, you say that it's classic or retro. Now, aside from the euphemism, there's also, what else? Just working through these rhetorical devices, just seeing which ones you can tell me about. Okay, dysphemism, yes. And what's that? Dysphemism. No, you got it. Dysphemism. And it's like the opposite of euphemism, so you can maybe just quickly tell me. Now, don't worry about the spelling. You're almost correct, John. You just missed the letter S after Y. DYS, and then the rest is all correct. But the dysphemism is when you replace what with what. And why would you do that? I'm sitting here with my little guy, Eddie, one of my cats, so he's always chilling with me. But yeah, still to the question. What do you say? Meaning of dysphemism. So yeah, you replace a neutral or positive word with a negative one to create disapproval. That's right. So it would be like saying, hey, this guy's smoking cancer sticks, instead of saying that, he's smoking cigarettes. Like this guy's driving a bucket instead of like a used car, like, so a word that makes it sound worse. Instead of saying this guy was let go from his job, he was fired, he was sacked, like a worse sounding word. Okay, now another rhetorical device, we say euphemism, dysphemism. There's also hyperbole. That's simply to use exaggeration to try and overstate something, like I literally died when I saw my grade or whatever. Hyperbole. There's sarcasm. That's when you use like irony or taunting, kind of to ridicule someone or to create, to deflect from critical analysis or to make light or make fun of somebody. So like smooth move when somebody drops something. We talked about also simply deception. And there's either active or passive deception. So with active deception, that's when you say something false on purpose to try and mislead people. And then passive deception would be like withholding truth in order to conceal information. So active deception would be like saying something false when you're like, I don't know, dating somebody, you like lie about your past. And passive deception would be just like hiding facts about your past from the person instead of telling them false things. Okay, now there's 4 like communication styles, and let me know what you remember on that. What were the different 4 communication styles? Okay, aggressive, yes. And with aggressive communication, what's the point? The person only cares about one thing mainly, and what is it? Just asking about that, getting their way. They just want to get their way no matter what, even if it ends up hurting people's feelings, seeming rude, seeming hostile, and destroying or damaging relationships. Now, aside from aggressive, there's also what else? You say aggressive, but there's also beyond that, there's passive. Okay, good. Now, passive communication is all about not necessarily about getting your way, of course, but instead this person hates something. What is it that the passive communicator really doesn't like? Yeah, they want to avoid confrontation. They hate conflict and confrontation so much that they usually are just a pushover who will back down very easily. And then you have 2 more. What's the name of one of those other ones? Say aggressive, passive, but also assertive, yes. So assertive communicators, they have a nice middle ground. They'll tell you what they want or they need. They're not afraid to say it, but they're not going to also come at you the wrong way and hurt your feelings. So they'll say what they want or need calmly, confidently, but they also know when it's time to hold back a little bit so that they don't cross lines and end up messing up the relationships that they have with people. Okay. So, one more is the last one. Let me know what it is. You said to me aggressive, passive, and assertive. What's left? There's one more. There you go, exactly. Passive aggressive. So with passive aggressive communication, the main thing the person, well, there's 2 things going on. With passive aggressive, they do want to get their way, but they don't want to come right out and just say it honestly. So instead of telling you openly and honestly what they want or need, they resort to like indirect strategies of manipulation to still get their way without saying it openly. Okay. Now, there's only a few last questions that have to do with the topic of knowledge in chapter 4. So first off, what do they say knowledge is in the literature? There's 3 conditions that basically define it, and you can tell me what those were. Yes, justification, truth, and belief. 2 of those terms we've already talked about. Truth, when whatever the sentence says matches the facts. Belief, when the person thinks that the sentence is true. So I guess let's just finish off those concepts by asking, what is justification then? What is it when a person has a justified belief? Just checking to see. Yes, having good reasons or evidence to support or back up your belief. That's justification. So when you have reasonable evidence to support your beliefs, we call them justified beliefs. Those are beliefs with justification. So it'd be the difference between somebody saying, I'm just guessing that this person is guilty, having not looked at any of the evidence, and a person who says, no, I believe they're guilty, but I have great reason to think so because I've examined a whole bunch of evidence that pertains to the facts of the case. Okay, good. So, question, what is rationalism? This is one of the different views about where most of our knowledge comes from. But to a rationalist, what do they say? Where does most of it come from? Rationalism. Most human knowledge comes from where? You say, Alex, being practical and reasonable. Not exactly, even though it's not completely wrong to say that. You've got, I think, the better explanation, Eileen. It's from reason, ideas, and abstract thought. So to the rationalists, most of our knowledge comes from the things that we can just intuit with the mind without even having to use the five senses. So like think about how you know all these facts in geometry or in like mathematics. When you're thinking of 2 + 2 is 4, you're not necessarily like using your sight, taste, touch, hearing, or smell. You're just thinking of the idea. And so to rationalists, most of our knowledge comes from these abstract concepts. Not to worry, Daphne. Thank you for letting me know. Just having a little Wi-Fi glitch. But just do your best to follow along, and if you can't, then you can replay the video that I'll post afterwards, and it'll show all this stuff in good, high clarity and with no, I think, issues on the playback. But just do your best to follow us for now. I'm going to ask, though, about the other thing, which is empiricism. I'll make short work of it, though, because we talked about it also when we discussed science. So empiricism is the alternative view that most human knowledge comes from the five senses and observation. So based on that view, most of our knowledge does come from the things that we can either see, taste, touch, hear, or smell, and observe based on those modes of sense perception. Okay, now, what is evidence in the first place? Let me know what you think is evidence. Something that can prove or disprove something else. That's right. So evidence is the stuff that you would show to prove or disprove a claim, whatever it might be. And, well, what are some good, reliable sources of evidence? Places that we can go to find evidence if we're looking for it for some reason. And you guys on the same wavelength for sure. We have some reliable sources. There's, okay, I'll give you a couple. There's direct experience, yes. So like if you perceive something yourself, then direct experience is what tells you that it's true. On the other hand, no, not the library, John. That has to do with research resources, which is a separate question, actually. Primary sources of evidence, we have direct experience. There's also testimony. That's evidence that's presented by way of other people telling you things or reporting them to you. Now, we'll get to the research resources just in a moment. It's question 10, a little ways down. But yeah, direct experience, testimony, memory, and then inference. Okay, so like I'll give you an example of how I might use that different sources of evidence for one claim. Suppose there's a fire going on somewhere. One way I might know about it is just being there, seeing and witnessing the fire. Like I'm seeing the flames, smelling the smoke. So that's very clear evidence that there's a fire. Another way I might know is not by being there, but by hearing someone tell me. So someone calls me and says, hey, there's a fire at so-and-so's place. Just wanted to let you know. Now, I haven't perceived it with my own eyes, but I've heard it from someone else, and that's testimonial evidence. Another possibility would be memory, like I remember seeing the fire yesterday, or I remember my friend telling me about it yesterday. So memory allows us to recall later on things that we perceived or heard in the past. And then there's inference. Inference is when you draw conclusions from other related facts. So if I saw a fire engine going towards a place and I heard the sirens going off, I might be able to conclude that there's a fire somewhere, even if I'm not perceiving it nor hearing testimony. A burglar could steal a package, from somebody's doorstep, and if you witness it with your own eyes, then you saw it directly. Or if you heard somebody tell you that it happened, then you heard it through testimony. Or if one of those two things happened and you remember it later, then that would be memory. And a final possibility is nobody told you, you didn't see it, but you see a bunch of footprints in the snow that lead up to where the package would have been and then leading away, and that is a reason to infer that there was a thief. Okay, good. We use evidence to have justification for our beliefs, and we should try to have good, reasonable evidence for all the things we believe. Now, what is false memory? It's when a person thinks they can remember something, but what? But it didn't happen, or at least it didn't happen in the way that they seem to think it did. And that, unfortunately, is a common occurrence, so we have to be in the habit of checking our memories against other evidence. Now, suppose you're looking at an expert giving testimony about something. What are 4 qualities that you could use to evaluate how credible this testimony of the expert is? You might look into what facts about the expert. Consider what about them? So dealing with experts, so to speak, so-called experts, we would like to know what about them? Their education, yes. So how much education do they have? Where did they get it? What topics did they study when they were working on their education? Beyond education, there's also what else? Accomplishments, right? And experience. Good. So accomplishments refers to like, does this so-called expert have any like professional accomplishments, titles, awards, honors that give more facts and evidence about their credibility? And then the experience they have, how much time have they spent working in the field with the education that they have? And then you've got the reputation. So how well is this person perceived by other professionals out there in the field in their same domain of expertise? Okay, good. Now, anecdotal evidence and hearsay. These are not the most reliable sources of evidence to use, so we'd like to know what those are so we don't kind of over-rely on them. What is the concept of anecdotal evidence? Anecdotal evidence? This is PG, by the way. She's the sister of Eddie, so I have 2 of them. Yeah, so anecdotal evidence is evidence that's based on only one person's personal experience. So it's sometimes skewed, biased, unreliable. You need to check more than one person's personal account of what happened to get the right understanding. Then there is hearsay evidence. Can you tell me what's that? Testimony that passes through several other people before it gets to you, right? So you have to be a little careful about trusting hearsay too much, because a lot of times facts can change or be distorted when they go through too many different hands before they reach you. Okay, so then the CRAP test. This is one of those little 5-point tests that the book mentions, which is supposed to give us insight into how credible a piece of information is. So each letter stands for a different word, and that's what the CRAAP test is. So what's letter C stand for? Or you could just tell me what all the letters stand for. No, it's not credibility, Alex, no. C is for currency, meaning how current, how recent is the information that you're looking at. Is it up to date or not? Then we have another letter, R, for relevance. Is this information related to the topic that you're trying to study? If it's not, then it's not to be trusted or relied on. So it has to be related to, relevant to the topic. Then there's 2 letters, A. What are those standing for? You've got authority, yes, meaning who gave the information out, and do they have any kind of expertise on this subject? And then the other letter, A, is for accuracy. I'll just let you know. Accuracy is how true, factual, and reliable is the information. And then finally, for the letter P, we say it stands for what? Purpose. Okay, yeah. So like, why was this information created? What's the purpose behind that? Is it to sell something, to win votes or something, or is it just to give unbiased public information or reliable information? Research resources. So now, John, if you wanted, you could say things like library, but That's the question. What are places you can go? Sorry. Places you can go to find research information while you're conducting research on any topic. There's the internet, right? The web. We said already the library. That's another one. There's academic journals, correct? Yes, a third source. There's government documents, right, that are in the public domain. And there's the interview with an expert. And I guess there's also the dictionary and the encyclopedia if you're looking for just small research, like the meaning of a word or a particular term. Okay, now the War of the Worlds radio broadcast. Back in 1938, there was this radio broadcast that was being shown. This was before the era of television, so radio would have been what people used to find like sports, news, entertainment, and all the rest. Sometimes there would be voice acting plot lines of like, I don't know, stories or works of fiction. And on this time, there was just a fictional enactment of the science fiction novel War of the Worlds. The plot of the novel was that Martians had come to the planet Earth and were invading and taking over. Some people who had tuned into this show thought that it was a news report instead of just a fictional thing for entertainment. And because of their belief that it was real news, many people got into a panic, and even some of them thought they could see or perceive these aliens in the sky, which shows that our social influences can powerfully shape the way we perceive reality, and that we have to be willing to sometimes question what we think is true. Now, the memorable events error, that's when we place more importance on something than it really deserves just because it's rare. As an example, people fear flying more than driving, even though driving there's tons of statistics to prove that it's a much more likely cause of death and does kill many more people every year, especially, in our country where roadway accidents is one of the leading causes of non-illness related death. So people are more afraid of the more rare event because it consumes more media attention when it happens, but that's not fully rational. So anyway, memorable events here, placing more importance on something that it actually deserves just because it's rare. Misperception of random data. This is thinking that you can see order or a pattern in something which is actually just random. That's right. Thank you, John. People do this all the time. Sometimes they think they can see almost as though there was like an artist behind the creation of an image in the clouds, or they will see something that's actually just coincidental and then assign it greater meaning than it really has because it's, after all, just a random occurrence or a coincidence. Okay. Now, misperception, we said that. Probability error. This is when a person miscalculates the probability of an event by a significant margin. One example of this could be like the gambler's fallacy, when people irrationally believe that their next bet is going to have different odds than what it actually has. So like if you're betting on a coin flip, it doesn't matter what the prior outcomes were of any number of flips. The current odds of it landing heads or tails is just 50-50. It doesn't change because it's hot or because the law of averages say it's due for a change. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Who knows this? It's when somebody expects something to happen and then that causes what? Self-fulfilling prophecy. Anybody got this one? There you go, John. Yeah. So somebody expects something to happen, but that expectation ends up causing the event to happen. So, you expect your partner to break up with you, so you start to kind of like not show them as much affection, and then that happens to lead to the breakup. Or you think that your neighbor doesn't like you, and so you don't end up like talking to them or greeting them because you feel this sense that they're not going to like you, and because you never interact with them, now they don't like you. So in life, sometimes we cause ourselves to have the negative results that we don't want just because we expect them. So it's better to wait for evidence that's clear to show something's true instead of behaving on the basis of an unfounded expectation, which ironically can cause the thing that you don't want to happen to occur. So one of us, one of them error. This is when we classify people and separate people into groups of us and them, and then we show whoever we call them less respect. So this could be in the case of like race, religion, gender, orientation, social class, economic status, educational attainment, nationality, you name it. If we think of people as others that are not within our own circle, then we sometimes treat them with less respect. But we have to realize that we're all more similar than we like to believe, um, and that we should not dehumanize and disrespect people just because they're different from us. Next up, diffusion of responsibility. What is that? Who knows this? Diffusion of responsibility. It happens in what kind of settings? What exactly is it? It could even be in a classroom when you're waiting for someone else to answer a question, but let me know. In a group setting, no individual feels personally responsible to take the action, and so no action actually gets taken. When you're in a group, sometimes you feel like your responsibility gets kind of diluted into the group, so nobody wants to do anything on their own independent initiative. You're standing around waiting for somebody to perform CPR on a person that looks like they're choking. Meanwhile, everyone's just looking and kind of filming it on their phones, but no one's actually intervening. So you got to sometimes be the one to shake yourself out of groupthink and take actions, especially when it's an urgent situation. Kitty Genovese, she's an example of this because basically she lived in New York. She had a lot of neighbors. She was coming home from work at 3 a.m. She was stabbed and murdered. She was crying out to people for help, and 30 different people did hear her, but they all assumed someone else would take care of it because, there's a lot of us listening. And because of that widespread tendency, nobody ended up picking up the phone even, and it led to her death. So that's just one example of how diffusion of responsibility can work. Finally, the Ash experiment. Which one was that one? What was the question being asked in the Ash experiment? It was a standard line test, yeah. So they would get a group of people. They would have 5 of them coached prior to that saying, we want you to give the same answer that's wrong. And then the 6th person was the one that didn't know about that little collaboration with the research team. And they were really just trying to see, will the last person give the same wrong answer that the others did or no? So you'd have one line, which you would compare with 3 other lines. And you'd have to just tell which line is it that matches the length of the standard. And 5 people would give the same wrong answer. So what was the result? 75% of people in the position of the last subject gave the same wrong answer. And so it shows that we actually do have our powerful tendency to have our views shaped by conformity. And if that can happen even with something as basic as looking at lines and trying to judge which one's the same length, which should be very easy, then it could obviously happen much more so in everyday life when it comes to questions of greater significance than just dealing with lines. Okay, so we've reached the end. We covered the first half last time, and now we've covered the first half this time. So we're all set to go, everyone, and I guess I'll pretty much close this stream now and let you go. So we'll be back in touch on Thursday when I send off the final exam form. And other than that, just look for my announcements to the class. I'll post this meeting's lecture on the page. And Eileen, have I received your email? Let me double check really quick to make sure if it's here. While we're all here together, I can just do that for you. 1 second. Which one are you talking about, Eileen? The most recent one I have is of your 4th homework. Are you referring to a grade check? Thank you. I see your grades. Yes, I'll get that one back to you just now. Okay, not to worry. Yeah, I have it here. I saw it from yesterday, or from last week. My bad. I'll get back to you. Not to worry. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great one. Signing off. But it's been really wonderful teaching all of you, and I'm sure that I'll see you around campus next time if I get a chance. I'll be teaching in person in the spring, so maybe some of you will take my epistemology course, and if you don't, feel free to drop in and don't be a stranger. Yeah, the car situation's going fine, everyone. Not to worry. It's getting replaced, and I had full coverage, and I owned the car, so it's actually not too bad for me in the end the way it worked out. All right, have a great one, everyone, and once again, thanks so much for all your work this semester, and I'll be in touch with you. Take it easy. Bye-bye. Okay, closing this one. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, guys. And one more, sorry, to the YouTube crowd. I just got to close this stream. So thanks so much, everyone, and I will see you when I see you. Take it easy.